Good afternoon, dear friends. This is Ruslan Belov with you. We continue to analyze the situation on the front lines in our daily format. So, friends, yesterday we stopped at the situation in the Toretsk area. Today, let's move forward. Regarding Toretsk, there is progress by the Russian army on the northeastern flank. They have retaken Krimska and captured Dakhny. The next objective here is undoubtedly Delevka. And I'm not just talking about Delevka itself, but the larger Delevka area, since the entire territory to the east, roughly 30 square kilometers, is being cleared. Most importantly, the troops are advancing on a broad front towards Bila Hora and Orekhovo-Shultain, and from there towards Konstantinovka. The battle for this city is undoubtedly part of the military command's plans for the summer of 2025. This also relates to the situation in Chasiv Yar. Things are going very badly for the Ukrainian armed forces here. For example, yesterday, Ukrainian military expert Miroshnikov lamented this. He literally said that everything is bad. At the moment, the Ukrainian armed forces in Chasiv Yar only control part of the Shevchenko neighborhood. Yes, these two areas of the private sector. The central quarters, although not yet fully secured, are essentially already under Russian control, as the army has broken through to the western part of the city. By the way, I posted a video of this assault on my Telegram channel. The assault was extremely difficult. There's no hiding that. Extremely painful, so to speak. 25 armored vehicles were involved, and 19 of them were either burned or damaged. Only 6 units reached their destination intact. The western part of Chasiv Yar. Nevertheless, despite such losses in equipment and personnel, the western part of Chasiv Yar ultimately came under Russian control. Again, you can see the video of this assault on my Telegram channel, as well as footage of a captured Ukrainian armed forces stronghold where the bodies of female assault troops were found. Follow the link in the description to my Telegram channel. So the western part of the city has been taken. How will you now supply the group in the central quarters? There's a forest here, no roads, nothing. Even if there were roads, it's only a kilometer away. Therefore, anything or anyone moving would immediately be hit, not only by drones, but also, by bullets, since 1 kilometer is within effective range of small arms. I won't even mention snipers, so maybe some of them are still hiding in basements, trying to be supplied by drones. But they no longer have control over the central quarters. This is also confirmed by Ukrainian military expert Miroshnikov. Notice he even specifically notes in parentheses that the central district will soon be lost. Overall, the assault on Chasiv Yar has been going on for a long time, already a year. But it seems this whole saga is coming to an end. And just in time for the summer campaign, the situation will reach its conclusion because let me explain why the movement towards Konstantinovka from Toretsk aims to approach the city from the west, while from Chasiv Yar, the movement will, well, it's already happening, just without much success yet. But once Chasiv Yar is fully secured, all forces will be directed towards advancing to Stupochki and then approaching the city from that side. That's regarding Konstantinovka. By the way, the city is located in a lowland, so it will be quite difficult for the Ukrainian armed forces to defend it. Therefore, the current task is simply to get as close as possible, both from Toretsk and Chasiv Yar. Then artillery will do its job. But there's another city that will also be a target of the summer campaign: Kramatorsk. Movements towards it are currently cautious, but from several directions. One is from Novomarkov. The village is located on high ground. And from there, the descent leads towards Kramatorsk. The second area is to the north. Here is the village of Vasyukivka. Fighting is currently ongoing there, but this is also part of the operation to approach Kramatorsk. Although, of course, it's still quite far from the city, the current task is simply to get closer so that drones can start working on the city. This will complicate both movement and logistics for the Ukrainian garrison in Kramatorsk. At the moment, the distance from Novomarkov to Kramatorsk is 16 kilometers, and from Vasyukivka, it's 22 kilometers. Let's move on. Things are looking much more positive on the Siversk direction. Yes, this is another city targeted for the summer campaign. In total, there are 6 cities: Pokrovsk, Konstantinovka, Kramatorsk, Siversk, Lyman, and Kupiansk. Of course, success won't be achieved everywhere. That's important to understand. but for example, the Siversk direction, which until recently was at a standstill, now inspires, let's say, cautious optimism. Bilohorivka is now 100% under the control of the Russian army. All the surrounding heights have also been taken and are under control. Currently, there is cautious probing of the territory to the west, particularly in the direction of Hryhorivka. There is also noticeable activity in the area of the village of Vyimka. In other words, a creeping offensive is underway with the goal of encircling Siversk from 3 sides. Only after that will any specific assault actions be taken. In the area of the bridgehead on the right bank of the Zherebets River, there is no movement towards Lyman yet. The positions in front of Kolodyazy are currently static. However, there is movement towards Zelenaya Dolina. And I'll tell you this is a much more important target than Kolodyazy. You might ask why. Because it is through this village that the road to Lyman passes. You see? Only after this road is cut off can targeted movement towards the city begin. Lastly, what needs to be addressed in today's update is the Kharkiv region. Here, there is also a slow creeping encirclement of Kupiansk, which, by the way, is being discussed by Ukrainian military analysts. Currently, fighting is ongoing in Holubivka, and from there, it's just a kilometer to the entrance of Kupiansk. Plus, the same Ukrainian military analysts are sounding the alarm about the assault actions currently being carried out in the direction of Kondrashivka, because if both Kondrashivka and Holubivka come under Russian control, then, firstly, the descent to the city itself will begin, and secondly, the Veliki Burluk-Kupiansk highway will be taken under control. Accordingly, a full-scale assault on the right bank part of the city is expected, and if the right bank part is taken, the left bank part will fall automatically. In general, the summer is expected to be hot, both literally and figuratively. I know you're also interested in the situation in the Belgorod and Kursk regions, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. Now I'd like to talk a bit about missile and long-range drone strikes, as well as the political aspect. Let's start with the massive drone strike on Kiev and the Kiev region. Last night, Ukrainian sources and local residents published a huge amount of footage showing Russian German drones hitting Ukrainian armed forces targets in the capital. A vast number of episodes, and of course, several questions arise. The first question is, why isn't Ukrainian air defense working? Overall, it seems, at least over the past few days, that Ukraine's air defense is completely absent. And I remind you that strikes on the capital of Ukraine, on the city of Kiev, are not the first massive drone strikes we've seen in recent days. If we summarize, these drone raids by the Russian army began on March 19th. Perhaps they started even earlier, but in terms of coverage and description of these events, they began around the 19th. And on the 19th, the first strikes were carried out on the city of Odessa. We have a lot of footage confirming a similar situation. A large number of explosions, strikes on warehouses, strikes on positions, and possibly strikes on energy infrastructure, though that's highly unlikely. And of course, the question arises, what exactly is the Russian side trying to demonstrate with these strikes? At first, it seemed that the Russian side was striking warehouses, possibly targeting weapons supplied by Western countries, such as the United Kingdom and possibly France. And in principle, the strikes on Odessa fit this logic. Moreover, on the night of March 21st to 22nd, massive strikes were also carried out on the city of Zaporizhzhia, which also generally fits the logic that Russia was trying to inflict fire damage on warehouses, ammunition, and trains carrying equipment, which Ukraine is currently trying to mass transfer from the western part of the country to the east, possibly towards the Pokrovsk direction, the Kupiansk direction, or towards the state border. With these strikes, Russia is trying to, let's say, reduce the combat potential of the Ukrainian armed forces. But the strikes on Kyiv don't quite fit into this logic. And overall, when we talk about all these strikes, aside from the attempt to reduce Ukraine's combat potential, the first thought that comes to mind is the upcoming negotiations scheduled for tomorrow, Monday, May 24th, in Saudi Arabia. These will be the most crucial negotiations, as they will be the first talks since the beginning of the Istanbul process, where the Russian side, the Russian delegation, and the Ukrainian delegation will be in the same building, on the territory of the same state where these negotiations are taking place. If we talk about the negotiations on March 24th, the main topic and focus will be reducing the intensity of strikes or even establishing a ceasefire on energy infrastructure facilities. Overall, these negotiations can be considered a turning point in the course of hostilities, in the course of the special military operation, because they are extremely important. And in general, Ukraine has found itself in a very interesting trap, which I will now try to explain to you. Let me remind you that tomorrow the Ukrainian side will attempt to provide the American delegation, which will subsequently relay this information to the Russian delegation, with a list of facilities on which the Ukrainian side would like a ceasefire on energy infrastructure to be applied. And all these events, these negotiations, are being held in mind with this understanding that Ukraine will provide some list. But we perfectly understand that the Russian side will present a similar list to the Americans, and accordingly to Ukraine. And most likely, if we talk about the Russian list, it should definitely, in my opinion, include the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And this is the trap I mentioned a minute ago. Tomorrow, the Ukrainian side will have to make a decision whether to allow, extend, or expand the ceasefire to include the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant on the side of the Russian Federation. Because if they accept this proposal, this list, then we must clearly understand that the Russian side may, within the next few months, fully restart the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and begin supplying electricity to the southern region. This includes Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, Crimea, and possibly Donetsk. This would be a major breakthrough from this perspective. And of course, if the Ukrainian side rejects this proposal from the Russian Federation, it will mean only one thing: the collapse of the truce and the breakdown of peace agreements between the US, Russia, and Ukraine. This would undoubtedly be a slap in the face to Trump, which could subsequently lead to a reconsideration of military aid to Ukraine, to Kharkiv, and possibly a revision of the American side's attitude toward providing Ukraine with intelligence information. This, in turn, could lead to another round of escalation and another offensive by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And by the way, if we talk about what is currently happening along the entire line of contact, it is clear that the Russian army is preparing for another offensive, though it is not yet clear exactly where this offensive will take place. That's all for today regarding the situation on the front lines. I bid you farewell. I wish you a good weekend, and until we meet again.